Improving Alpha Innovation in Investing, ESG and Technology with Michael Oliver Weinberg in partnership with Vidrio Financial. Vidrio Financial is a premier data management provider shouldering the responsibility for your data from collection to extraction, transformation and enrichment. Vidrio monitors over 2,000 diverse funds, processing millions of data points each month. Discover how Vidrio empowers your institutional portfolio data by combining advanced AI and human expertise to yield comprehensive analytics on performance, cash flow, risk, valuation, and more. All delivered seamlessly through Vidrio's Data Management Hub. Save your investment team valuable operational time, providing actionable insights like never before. Explore more at vidrio.com.
Hi, this is Michael Oliver Weinberg. We would like to welcome everyone to the Improving Alpha, Innovation in Investing, ESG, and Technology podcast series. Today, Kristin Varela, Chief Investment Officer of Hawaii, will be our guest. So listeners have a high-level sense of our roadmap. We'll start with some background, then discuss the usual. Investors, academics, and business leaders should be able to extract a great deal of value from Kristin's insight. On that note, welcome, Kristin.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Our pleasure. Why don't you start with your background?
Yeah, sure. So I was thinking about where to start here because I don't think it's a conventional background, to say the least. I'm a lifelong New Mexican, and I have roots from multi-generational ranching family in northern New Mexico. So my home state of New Mexico is very close to me, as well as my family. And my family's worked the land for generations and has evolved into public service over the last few many decades or even centuries. And I'm proud to say that the large majority of my family are in public service, either teaching, working in public service as essential employees or whatnot. So I think that is a great background to start. I come from a place where we care very much about hard work and ethics. I think we care a lot about legacy and tradition and what we leave behind for future generations. And I really came into public service with that similar mindset in place. I did begin my career in private sector. I worked for a registered investment advisor, managing private wealth capital in a more traditional modeled portfolio sense. And interestingly enough, I actually was part of an M&A transaction from the private market space where they took our registered investment advisor and the affiliate bank that was with them and merged them into kind of a Southwestern regional banking conglomerate. So I got to, before I even knew I was going to go into private markets, I actually got to experience the impact of an M&A from an employee standpoint. And that was eye-opening. To say it was disrupting would be an understatement. And it did cause a lot of pressure on, our culture within our broader team, as well as for me personally. I'm a single mother. And at the time, I think I had maybe a 2-year-old. My son he's 16 now. He might have been even younger. And it just felt like it was a little too fast moving and a little too cutthroat for me. So I made the shift into government. I moved over to New Mexico Para. I worked under some CIOs that I know you've interviewed before, one being John Grable, who I respect very, very much. And I found the really exciting place of working for my own family. So I've held various roles in New Mexico, some building out portfolios and some running the strategic leadership over there. And then in 2022, I found the opportunity to apply for this Hawaii job. If you all remember, in 2022, we were all facing inflationary spikes and a lot of pools of capital were struggling pretty significantly. But this plan was doing it differently. They were actually positive and in the top 3 performing plans along this time frame. And it was obvious that they were thinking about risk differently. So I was excited to apply. I will tell you, I'm extremely fortunate that there was a well-functioning, incredible board here, as well as executive leadership who saw potential because I am, admittedly, I'm younger in the space, and I'm sure there was a lot of very qualified candidates, but I think it struck me that the board saw potential and saw that values mattered quite a bit. So when I came on, I was the lucky inheritant of a fantastic team, highly functioning, a board that had supported the vision. And then I was coming on not to kind of course correct or make any big changes, but to keep carrying on that vision of a mission-centric mindset here at ERS. So yeah, I think that's a quick background. I do come from an operational background and really worked my way through the ranks, less so educationally, more so on the ground, settling trades and then rebalancing portfolios and then underwriting deals all the way to overseeing this plan today.
Great. And I somewhat facetiously said you were Chief Investment Officer of Hawaii. Obviously, that isn't true. Why don't you clarify for the listeners what you're running for Hawaii and what the objectives are?
Of course, yeah. So, Chief Investment Officer for the Employees Retirement System of the state of Hawaii. We are the defined benefit plan here for the state. We cover all service employees here. So that includes municipal, state, magistrate, basically all employees we're representing them, inclusive of teachers as well. Our plan is sitting at a nice high right now, 25 billion, and continuing to grow. And alongside that, we have about 150,000 active and retired members that we represent across the state of Hawaii. Aside from tourism, the state is one of the largest employers in the state for us. So we get to represent a very large and meaningful group or population of the state. And our mission is really simple. It's to continue to ensure, financial dignity and multi-generational wealth for this generation and the futures to come. However, the mission to do that is not as simple. If we could just invest, our target return is 7%. And if we could do that in the most simple way possible and achieve that consistently, we would do that. But, it's not always that easy. So our philosophies really start with first, strong governance. So making sure that we've got a very strong relationship with our board and our stakeholders, as well as within our team, and really good checks and balances to have strong accountability. Next, we implement in a risk-aware fashion. So we care very much about allocating risk deliberately, not just allocating capital to targets. And then last is cultivating our culture here. So that happens in a few different ways. One being capital through targeted investment programs here in the state of Hawaii, but also trying to build the future generation of allocators who will stay here and not depart to go do bigger things on the mainland. So trying to create opportunity and growth for future beneficiaries and future professionals here in Hawaii. And I think where we look a little different, or where I call it our fingerprint or our principles in practice, is the way we achieve our 7% rate of return is first to prioritize steady and reliable results. So you will not see us chasing highs. We're very volatility sensitive. We rely on diversification more than anything. So you'll see, if you look at our asset allocation, we're allocated based on risk profiles, one being broad growth, think corporate profitability, and the other being diversified strategies. So think of a hedge against growth shocks. Within that, we do diversify pretty significantly. And we embrace innovative and alternative structures to allow us to manage those assets dynamically and proactively. I think for our portfolio, we've got a tilt toward embracing more illiquidity as opposed to less. So the fund does target a large percentage of private market assets, and we can talk about the challenges and opportunities associated with that later. But I would say we're on the higher end of the allocation scale there, and we do believe that illiquidity helps us achieve our longer term results. And, we do continue to see captured value over time. And then we are very focused on opportunity costs. So you can imagine, as a CIO of a $25 billion plan, capital can go just about anywhere, and there's many good ideas. It's really important to understand the opportunity costs associated with our active allocations, the deviations away from just public market or beta exposure, and then really setting active and realistic expectations for how we kind of value complexity over time. So I think that's ERS in a nutshell. Happy to answer anything else there.
Yeah. How are you innovating to improve alpha from an investment perspective?
So when I came on, I think there was a couple things we had to do pretty immediately. There was a lot of relationships in the book, and I think really here what you need is you need a really strong technical presence on your team, but you also need a really strong relationship component to this. This is a relationship just as much as it is a financial tool, right? So I came on and we assessed the amount of managers in our portfolio. We do not invest internally, and we do rely on the experts in the space, the best managers in the space, to drive value in excess of market risk. But what we did notice pretty quickly is we weren't really able to be too innovative because we were allocating to many, many names and not really streamlining our partnerships. So first thing we've done in the last 3 years is we have streamlined partnerships. We've de-emphasized relationships that no longer serve our goals or our values. We've doubled down and had larger, more meaningful allocations to managers that are representing kind of our values, that understand our mission and are doing things a little bit differently. The goal here is really to be that first call when a good idea comes or when opportunity for capital arises. And we do have plenty of liquidity to exercise that. The next thing we do that's a little different, but I think very valuable, is we do like the absolute return space, but we don't want to take the commingled or blind pool risk associated with the hedge fund allocations that you'll typically see in any portfolio. So well before me, and I take no credit for this, I think this was very innovative for ERS as an organization. They adopted and implemented a very high functioning separate account structure or dedicated managed account structure. And really what that's allowed this organization to do and our team to do on a daily is really allocate to managers that are very diversifying, that will react very differently in times of market stress, and we're able to tap into those diversifying streams in times of stress. So in 2022, when we were seeing growth markets really declining, this is a portion of our portfolio that we actually saw doing quite well. It was able to dynamically manage risk and, have a discretionary component to how to kind of navigate opportunities. And because of that separate account structure and not being locked up or in a commingled vehicle, we were able to harvest those gains just as quickly. So I think that that's really valuable to us. And then, last is I don't think we shy away from any interesting opportunities, whether that be here in Hawaii. We want our capital to represent what our members want. So to the extent we can improve the ecosystem here, either through venture or through food sustainability, we want to explore that. We'll explore structures with our managers, whether that means seeding strategies, separate account structures. Once again, a little bit of history. Hawaii had one of, a very early model of real estate separate accounts and has always thought about the space pretty innovatively. So I think it's relationships, I think it's structure, and then I think it's optionality and being able to manage your risk dynamically.
Are the separately managed accounts, the SMAs, commingled into one master fund, or they're all independent with each manager?
So on the private market side, they're independent with each manager through a JV structure. We make sure that to the extent we are in separate accounts, that we've got alignment there. And it's really, you could think of it more as a fund of one.
Got it. Okay. And then what about ESG? That's something that has had ups and downs through the life cycle of this podcast, particularly from when, as you mentioned, Jonathan Grable was on. That was some time ago, and ESG was sort of hot, and maybe now it's not. Though that said, governance is one thing that I think we can safely say everyone is a proponent of and has been consistent over the years that we've been doing this. Where does ERS Hawaii stand, and how are you, depending on the answer of that, what, if any, innovation are you engaged in there?
Yeah, so I think many have heard me say this in panels and in conferences recently, but I think the term ESG has gotten a bad rap, and we actually don't utilize ESG in its traditional marketing standpoint here at ERS. We're a signatory to the UNPRI. We do engage with Glass Lewis for our proxy voting. We do care about being responsible investors. I think that comes less from a political spectrum and more from a cultural one, to be honest with you. If you've ever been fortunate enough to visit Hawaii, what you'll get here is it's a very special place, and aina or land, ohana or family, and then traditions and culture matter very, very much. And the whole goal is to really continue to have a strong future to give to your next generation. And so all that to be said, anything that has a really heavy carbon footprint, you don't really see us in playing in that space. What we are trying to do is support energy transition. We do look to have really strong controls in terms of governance, whether that be at a fund level, at a GP level, or even engagement with our partners when necessary. But this is not a political endeavor. It's one that we look at as just another risk. So when I'm looking at our portfolio, I'm very good at compartmentalizing things. And, I think we balance 4 risks in the portfolio at the strategic level. There's market risk, manager risk, operational risk, and then systemic risk. And really we place responsible investing and the considerations associated that within the systemic risk scope. It's less about the impact of our dollar and more about preserving the capital of our dollar. And then we also just want to focus on making sure that we're managing and underwriting to any non-financial risks that might be present in a portfolio. And you really can't walk away from the E, S, or G to prudently underwrite those risks. And then I would just say from a local perspective, I think once again, food security matters tremendously here. And to the extent that we can help promote food security locally, we're trying to do that. So, in terms of the scope of innovation and what it is we're finding as we're actually outcombing the broader Hawaii ecosystem to identify business opportunities where our dollar not only serves our financial return, but can also serve our population with food security. And that's been, I think that's going to be an interesting advancement for us as we go forward.
Maybe you could share a little more thoughts on food security. I'd be curious to hear the concept is obvious, but is there a specific way that you're engaging in it or playing it?
Yeah, so we're looking at plenty of agriculture, aquaponics, and aquaculture initiatives here on the islands, but we actually were able to engage in one that I think is somewhat exciting. We're looking at a local aquaponics farm that is growing a large portion of the island's lettuce supply and directly distributing that to the education systems here in Hawaii. So, long demand. Hawaii, the large majority, if not almost all of their food comes from exports or imports. So food sustainability and security matters tremendously. And what's interesting about that is it also touches on those really sensitive pieces like land. We're not disrupting the soil. We're preserving the land for future generations. We are using innovative structures and technologies to be able to mass produce as much as we possibly can to meet demand. And I think that's been, that's nothing we're doing directly. It's us building those relationships with the community and finding those good ideas and backing them where we can and where it's financially feasible.
Got it. And then what about innovation from a technological perspective? Anything interesting going on there? Obviously, you're a pension fund, so it's perhaps more budget constrained and difficult.
That's true. I mean, I will tell you, we're certainly not running a quant shop here in any way at all. I think we're keeping up to the broadest extent that we can. We won't be kind of the leading drivers of technology here, but what we are doing is we're recognizing themes around AI and the kind of peripheral need of capital to support that. So our capital is going toward tech-focused things, whether that be in venture, in infrastructure through data centers. We're supporting there. I think for us internally, we are going to be a slow mover until we've got some more clarity on security in terms of implementing any sort of technological advancements like AI. So slowly I think we'll dip our toe into the space for more administrative functionality and potentially some streamlining of processes. But really where we're seeing the tech and where we're expecting tech is our managers. So once again, we expect to be hiring the best of the best. We expect them to be keeping up with technological trends and identifying ways to make better decisions and drive better outcomes. And We've seen managers utilizing certain portions of OpenAI to, to code systematic strategies. We see managers that are using tech to streamline sourcing capabilities. That I think it's deeply ingrained within our organization, but more at the dollar level than it is at the organizational level. That said, hopefully when we talk in 3 years from now, we've made a lot of progress, and I can step back and talk about that a little bit more directly.
You mentioned infrastructure, specifically data centers. What are you doing there? Are you investing in the debt, the equity, managers, buying bonds? What are you doing there?
Yeah, we're mostly in the equity. So when I came on, we did an asset liability study. So that was 3 years ago now. We actually increased our infrastructure and real assets allocation as an initiative to be a little bit more macro economically balanced in terms of risks. Infrastructure is a really interesting place. It's got contractual cash flows. It's got long life that looks a lot like our liabilities. And it's got a huge demand for capital going forward. So I think data centers is one of those areas where we've deployed capital. Energy transition continues to be an area that we look at and deploy capital. Those are through commingled products and more at the equity level than anything. It is a space that we're pretty excited about. And I ran the real assets portfolio in New Mexico for some time as well. So my background, I understand and really appreciate the role real assets plays in a total portfolio construct.
And you mentioned the energy transition. Is that sort of traditional wind and solar or other?
I think traditional wind and solar. I think we're taking more development risk on some side of it. Some is more contracted in nature. We have to bucket everything. So we do have more PE-like strategies that sit in our private equity book because the return profile looks like that. But really what we're looking to do is support, overall electrification. I don't think that phases out conventional energy at all, but it does support, especially in this environment where demand is going to be much higher given tech advancements and the need for energy because of AI.
I imagine energy prices are fairly high in Hawaii because of the structural.
That's an understatement. Yes.
Yeah.
There's many good things about Hawaii, but I'm not sure energy prices are one of them.
Right. And where do you see the best opportunity from an investment perspective now?
Let's see. So I think we're really stepping back. As I told you, we're a multi-risk portfolio across different structures and risk regimes. So some of this might sound a little less exciting than more exciting in terms of an alpha opportunity. But the first thing we've done is we've stepped back and simplified where we can. As we saw interest rates rise, we saw the inflationary spike now ease. It was really time to just bring in a little bit more of the traditional beta exposure and reduce some complexity. So that might be a little different from what you've heard before. We were really relying on private markets and alternative or absolute return strategies to kind of be the bulk of our diversification within the portfolio. So first, we brought back intermediate duration treasury or rates exposure just to be kind of a first line of diversification in times of stress. We then went through and assessed our leverage profile, making sure that we weren't too over our skis in anticipation of heightened vol. So we brought down some complexity there as we needed to. And then we shifted more capital into private markets. So once again, we believe in the value of private markets. We believe that there's long-term enduring value in private markets. And what we really wanted to look at is areas where fundamentals still matter, recognizing that managers are going to have to work much, much harder in this next decade to be able to drive alpha. So we do like disruption across private markets, and we do have capital available and liquidity ready to capitalize on any sort of cycle resets. So whether that be in private equity, which has seen kind of a slowing all the way around, or in real estate, which we're now seeing some interesting opportunities in the opportunistic spaces, we're seeing kind of a reset in core real estate. We like the option of capitalizing on disruptions in the private space where possible. We're being selective, and we're making sure that we do this with managers that we have high conviction in and that have multi-cycle proven track records, because that's going to matter quite a bit. Next is we still do like private credit, although we do recognize that it is getting very frothy, and it is the talk of just about any conference I go to or any panel I sit on. Private credit still makes a lot of sense to us, especially given that these teams can have strong covenants and have really strong workout capabilities. We're not skewing too far in the niche space. We're keeping it high quality, but the value is still there for us. We think that's interesting. Like I said, real assets is a really interesting space. So we continue to like the private market proposition of real assets. We think the liquid betas are not as efficient there, and the value of operational enhancements are still very, very strong. So I think infrastructure, we've stepped a little bit away from farmland and agriculture given kind of the trade concerns globally, but really it's infrastructure that we're focusing on to bring into the portfolio. And then, I do like market neutral strategies. So our portfolio on the absolute return side, it has both systematic or momentum-based strategies that frankly have not done very well, and I don't anticipate will do very well in this market that can move so quickly. I've called it a whipsaw market before, and momentum really relies on long-term fundamentals and pricing trends. So we have actually actively started to shift away from more momentum-based strategies and allocated to more market neutral discretionary based strategies where a manager has an overall kind of dynamic risk management overlay to account for the whipsaws in markets.
And what's the biggest challenge that you're facing now in achieving your goals? The 7%, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's many challenges, right? We as CIOs have been handed quite a bit in the last 3 years or 5 years if you want to extend it, and there's a lot of uncertainties in the space. So I think that is kind of the first thing. As we step back, we're looking at what the macroeconomic environment looks like and how that's treating some of our kind of long-standing strategies. So I talked a bit about momentum and how it's no longer a place of dependability in times of market stress. And that's really because these markets are moving and they're so volatile that there isn't enough time for fundamentals to actually be priced in. And so I think navigating through that is a challenge. And frankly, if I had a crystal ball, I would probably still get it wrong because just about everything in our macroeconomic landscape has surprised me in one way or another recently. I think the big thing there is we're working to just build out a highly diversified portfolio that can weather any storm. So instead of, relying on one source of return like equities or growth more broadly, we are diversifying that to be able to be more balanced. So that's a risk for us. A little bit more direct here in this portfolio is our team has done something a little bit interesting because we're working on building out a total fund risk budget in the portfolio. For us, it's a way to strengthen our governance. We do have delegated authority, and it allows the board to assess the quality of our implementation and weigh kind of the value of complexity over simplicity. So in order to do that, and I am getting to the challenging part of this, I promise, but in order to do that, we first had to clearly define what our board's strategic objectives were. So the board sets risk and return tolerances for us. But also when we assessed our policy portfolio, we had to redefine what we thought a policy portfolio should be from a very simple and clear perspective. So the board has now adopted a policy portfolio that can be implemented purely passively if they so choose. It still includes diversification, highly diversified, frankly. It's a nice, efficient, passive portfolio. It can be replicated and it's highly liquid. So by doing that and the board delegating authority of implementation to staff, what they've really done is they've set the target and the goal and their tolerance, and now outcomes measured against that, there's accountability for that. So that has been a challenge for us recently because we are a large allocator to private markets. We believe that private markets have their own risk profile or beta that's tied to public markets. So we've got public market benchmarks on those. And those lagging valuations have really slowed the the growth of the portfolio in the last 18 months or so. We don't believe this is a fundamental issue. We just think that public valuations reset and reset very quickly. And we're just still seeing private markets working through that reset or working through the fundamentals. Although we do see a lag between public to private market benchmarks, we don't believe that there's a systemic issue here or that fundamentals have reset. Really what we're watching for is just making sure that our managers have a value proposition and then reiterating the goal of benchmarking opportunity cost and policy with the board so that we all understand what the goal is. And then the third is safety, right? I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you that I was shocked on Liberation Day to see every safe haven do the exact same thing. And for a portfolio like ours, it's very, very defensive. That is not what you want to see, even if it was just for a brief period of time. So after that, and recognizing how quickly markets could move with one tweet, one announcement, we stepped back and pulled some of our cash out of market. So alongside our risk budgeting path, we also had the board adopt minimum liquidity targets. So we can always put our members' capital first and their liquidity needs first. And that for us is 2.5 years of cash flows. That equates to 5% of our fund. And after Liberation Day and watching how markets were moving and how diversifying assets just weren't performing as we would expect them to, particularly our bonds. Even gold looked a little iffy for a while there, which we don't have a gold allocation, but really watching what should diversify not showing up was a bit of a challenge for us. And we made the call to just keep our safety and our optionality. So we moved 5% of cash out of markets and just held it for benefit payments, for optionality. Now that we've gotten more clarity into what rates are looking like, we're seeing inflation easing, and trade seems to, although not completely clear yet, seems to be coming to some sort of a less volatile place. We have inched back into the market a little bit more, and we now hold about 2.5% of cash, but we're still holding that for a rainy day just to be safe. And then
got it. Keep going. Sorry.
I think the last piece is just our risk budget. So I'm hopeful that in this new year, our board will adopt this risk budget. We've been talking to them quite a bit about what that does for us. We are going to look at a total fund risk budget against this diversified yet simple policy portfolio. And we want the board to understand what types of risks we're taking. And I think for us, when I came in, it was really important that the team understand what our intentional and unintentional concentrations look like, and whether or not that was true alpha, intentional alpha, or if it was just, some sort of alternative beta in the portfolio. So I think this is the last piece of a governing tool for our board, but it's also, a really good starting point for my team to be able to further dissect their opportunities as they go forward.
Got it. And what's a red flag such that you wouldn't invest with a manager?
Let's see. I think everyone's likely heard me say this, and I don't want to be too repetitive on the values that are important here, but Hawaii is a very value-oriented culture, and I think all staff here share that same value. So it's important that our partners also share those values and understand who it is they're working for and why this capital matters so much. This is, we're finding managers, but we want to make sure that they understand that the financial stability of many thousands of Hawaii employees depends on the work that they do, and hopefully that will guide their governance process, their sourcing, their decision-making, everything. And so first is value alignment. I think being a good person, a good human, and being able to engage with my team, with me, and with our members in a great way, that matters quite a bit. So a red flag is the opposite of that. I think overconfidence or not talking about the scars or the lessons learned is a big red flag. If you can't talk about a hard period, I'm concerned you've either not been in this space long enough or you're not being honest about outcomes, and honesty and integrity matters quite a bit. Complexity that hides exposure is another one. So if a strategy takes 40 minutes to explain, it's likely too complex, and we're likely kind of disguising risk with sophistication. So I try to keep things as understandable as possible, and a quick pitch is always better for me. And then weak governance and alignment or misalignment. So that's a huge red flag. We want to be in it with our partners. And, some of the areas that we've really focused on are they, what does oversight look like? What does LP engagement look like? How do they make decisions culturally in their organization? All of those matter. So that's a big one. And then as a positive, not just a red flag, but a green one, because I like to also be optimistic, is I think managers understanding their role within this total portfolio is a really important place to be. If they can articulate how they fit into our risk allocation and can drive value for us, I think that is a really valuable contributor.
Okay. And what's a lesson you've learned?
Let's see. I think there's a few things. The first is, one of the lessons I've learned lately is it goes well beyond just the technicals of an investment. We should really be focusing not just on the investment thesis itself, or even the kind of edge or value drivers, but operations matters just as much as strategy. And I do think that we are coming into a place where we're going to see more and more mishaps in the traditional LPGP construct because of the lack of operational focus. So, a great strategy with weak operations is going to cost you, and it's not going to be a good outcome. And we've experienced that in some ways, and we've dodged some of those in other ways. So I think operational strength matters tremendously. And then I think culture is the real indicator of risk. So at the end of the day, what we're underwriting is historical track records and people and process and team. But what we've learned more directly and what we've put into practice is really reading communication up and down the organizational structure. So, sitting separate from the largest decision makers, really testing the communication of governance, making sure that the culture seems like one that truth flows freely, and really just diving in deeply to all layers of an organization to make sure that the right governance and controls are in place. I think that matters quite a bit as well.
We've alluded to inflation a couple of times indirectly, such as through energy costs and food security. Inflation is another topic that, again, over the years since Jonathan Grable, who you mentioned and I mentioned, was on. I think when he was on, it was very strong, and then it sort of had been decelerating or diminishing, and now obviously there's a bit of a question mark as to where it goes from here. How, if at all, does that impact your portfolio construction?
Yeah, I think we're a long-term investor. Our capital market assumptions are 10 plus years when we're looking to optimize our asset classes. We're not really making calls on more macro bets. But that said, I think that there's been a conscious effort to, like I said before, diversify our macro risk contributions, right? So we're never going to be able to call when the next growth shock or inflationary shock is. We all can wonder, and we can watch closely. For us, it's really important that we balance those risks so that the portfolio can weather through it one way or another. So, like I said before, we did add more inflation-sensitive assets into the portfolio and cash-flowing real assets. So we took that allocation from 7 to 19% of the fund. That was a conscious effort, and we made sure that we got there in a meaningful amount of time. So not all of the capital's in private markets. We're also using public market proxies to make sure that we at least have a beta neutral portfolio there. So that's been one of our key ways. We've expanded into credit spread risk where valuations make sense. And then, like I said, we continue to hold cash for optionality and attractive entry points as well. We're watching inflation just as closely as we're watching interest rates. And, we are not taking large bets in terms of the long end of the yield curve. The majority of our rate exposure is in intermediate duration, and we think we're being compensated for holding that risk at this point. So I think those are the main things. We try to tackle the macroeconomic risks more strategically and focus on just balancing the risks as opposed to leaning into one over the other.
Got it. What's a favorite book you've read, either recently or generally? Could be investment or non-investment, or just a book you like or would recommend. Yes, go on, please.
So I wish I could read more books, frankly. And I wish I could tell you I have some great ones. But the most recent book that I read was in preparation for our annual board education summit, where we really oriented our entire agenda and all the educational components around Hawaiian proverbs and culture. So I've just got done reading Olelo Noe Au from Mary Kavena Pukui. She's a local author here who actually gathered all these historical Hawaiian proverbs and has interpreted them for the reader. So I think that's really interesting because it has nothing to do with the technical nature of our jobs, but once again, back to values and culture. There's a lot of favorites that help us just keep our priorities in order, balance our risks, and think thoughtfully about the risks for future generations. So if anyone hasn't seen it, it's a beautiful book. It has beautiful illustrations, and it really was her life work. So it's a really great one to check out.
What advice do you have for other allocators or investors?
Let's see. First, I do get that this is an alpha-oriented podcast, but I would be remiss to not tell you that I depend more on beta than just about anything. So let's start with fundamentals. As an allocator, let's get our beta right. We should treat liquidity as a real decision and not just a simple assumption. So we should always be stressing that. And then let's understand the cost of complexity over time. There are areas where complexity matters quite a bit and can add a lot of value. And then there's some areas that maybe not as much, and it makes sense to just be in beta. So creating that optionality for my team to be able to assess whether or not the alpha thesis is there. And if not, having the ability to shift into just market beta, I think has been really powerful. And just, I encourage anyone to not underestimate the value of market risk. It gets us about 80% of the way.
Got it.
And then the other is character. So I think it's really important that, CIOs manage relationships and show strong character and really lead that mission with integrity. So being a strong and transparent voice for your board, your executive leadership, and your team and your members, I think that that's really, really valuable. It builds trust, and trust in what we're doing is really the foundation, right? So we could build the most elegant portfolio in the world, but if nobody knows what it is we're doing and truth is breaking down, there will be skeptics. So that won't work. I think that this job is a lot about technical skill as well as personal skill. So leading with clarity, humility, and mission mindset, I think always matters.
What haven't we discussed that we should have, or anything that you think is worth noting before we wrap up?
I think, we talk about markets and we talk about implementation and we talk about opportunities. I don't think we talk about our team as much as we should, frankly. So there's such a human side to pension stewardship, and having the right people sitting in the seats that are as tied to that mission as their members, I think is really powerful. So to the extent you are serving a mission like ours, whether through an allocator role, a CIO role, or an implementer of any sort, I think it's really important that we really consider how important this work is and how important this mission is. That said, I think that the pension allocation industry is somewhat underrepresented, and I don't think many people come out of business school dreaming to be, an investment officer of Hawaii ERS. So to the extent that we can have a broader recognition of how valuable and how meaningful this work is, alongside the complexity and scale of the work that we do, I think that's better for future generations. And then just, it really comes down to we're making promises to real people. And it's really important that we see those promises through. So being a human and being a strong steward of capital, I think matters more than anything. I think many strategies will do very well if they have enough time and conviction, but knowing kind of who you serve and why the work you're doing is important, that's special.
Got it. Well, that was perfect. Look, Kristin, we'd like to thank you for the interesting discussion and sharing your most valuable asset with us, your time. We hope listeners have a better appreciation for what one of our more thoughtful allocators is thinking about and how we may benefit as investors and allocators. This is your host, Michael Oliver Weinberg, hoping you join us again for our next episode, where we speak with another thought leader who will provide insight into improving alpha via innovation. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Improving Alpha Innovation in Investing, ESG and Technology podcast, presented in partnership with Vidrio Financial and sponsored by Alternatives Watch and PEVC Tech. Vidrio Financial offers a cutting-edge data management solution that not only collects and cleans your data, but also empowers investment teams to cut through the noise and extract valuable insights for better decision-making in areas such as valuation, risk assessment, and portfolio management. If you're an endowment, foundation, pension, sovereign wealth fund, asset manager, OCIO, or family office facing challenges with your data pipelines, we invite you to connect with us today and explore how Vidrio can seamlessly integrate with your investment team to enhance your data management capabilities. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Vidrio Financial or our host, Michael Oliver Weinberg. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding investment planning.